So here's the thing. I cannot stop thinking about how the Tortured Poets department would have hit completely differently if it had been treated like an actual era. Like if Taylor had committed to world building and visual storytelling, a narrative arc, all the stuff that made the Eras Tour such a cultural reset in the first place. I mean, we had so many distinct eras to choose from. But instead, we got whatever this was, a rollout that tried to be both a surprise drop and a traditional album cycle, a visual identity that was somehow both over-designed and completely blank, a record bursting with intricate writing and theatrical emotion packaged in Helvetica. So let's play a little game, shall we? I'm bringing the silliness back to Swiftologists. We've been too serious ologists lately. Let's pretend Tortured Poets was handled with the same care and clarity as a rollout like, I don't know, 1989 or Reputation. What could that have looked like? How would I have rolled it out if I was at the 13 management boardroom? What single would I have led with? What visuals would have actually reflected the sound and the scope of this project? Well, let's fix it. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Zach. I'm the Swiftologist. I make thoughtful weekly videos. And today I'm going to be breaking down why the Torture Post department visuals flop. I'm going to make up my own music videos. I'm going to talk about how I would have released the album myself. But most importantly, I am letting you know that I'm going on tour with my podcast, Evolution of Snake. We are coming to 10 cities. DC and LA are sold out and the other tickets are going quickly. Go to evolutionofsnake.com to get your tickets. It's also almost the 1-year anniversary of the Torture Post department. Can you believe we've been living with this record for this long? I can't. It's crazy. Before I get into my specific era rollout ideas, let me spit quickly about the visuals, or lack thereof, for Torture Poets department, because I think that this was one of the main ways in which Taylor dropped the ball and kneecapped the Torture Poets era a bit compared to the rest of her albums. The visuals felt kind of flat, and not in an intentional stripped down raw artistry way, more in a we're on the Eras tour and I don't really have any time to think this through, so let's just come up with something. The songwriting on this record is so elegant, it's so luscious, it's so complex, it's so visual. There are so many gripping images delivered here. Taylor going down with a ship, secret gardens in her mind, a spaceship literally abducting her, typewriters and melting candlesticks, her as a giant bird saving her lovers, throwing her love-stricken body onto the rocks, running with her dress unbuttoned. Hello, the material is right there. The material is begging to be released. Black and white and a button-down shirt is not an aesthetic, nor is poetry a concept. The Torture Poets visuals tell us absolutely nothing about the record. Folklore itself is a good example of kind of like the unfinished, intentional, and directed vibe. It really reflects the mood and the tone of the record, and it's the closest thing to lo-fi DIY indie rock that we're ever going to get from Taylor Swift. Compared to Folklore, the Torture Poets visuals just generally feel as though they were completed on a really tight deadline. Let's really get into these album visuals and examine why they're not working, though, because I think it's easy to just look at something and say, that's boring, without giving a reason. So we all know that Taylor is a very loyal collaborator as a creative. Jack Antonoff, we know, great, but sometimes this is to her own detriment. Joseph Castle, being her stylist for this long, I'm coming for you. Beth Gariband, who shot the Torture Poets cover, also did Folklore, Evermore, and Midnights. Now, here's my comment about choosing to work with her over and over. It worked for Folklore, it sort of worked for Midnights, though the sonic palette of that record bears almost no relation to its visual identity, but thematically, I guess it kind of makes sense. But it really flopped for Torture Poets. Beth Gariband's photography is intimate, it's soft, it's emotionally restrained, perfect for portraits like Folklore, where mood and subtlety are the point. I wouldn't necessarily say she has a strong point of view, though, as a photographer, whereas other photographers that Taylor has worked with in the past, like Sarah Barlow on Red, Merton Marcus on Reputation, and even Valeria Rocha on Lover, which was ugly, but still made sense for the record and was a distinct visual identity. I have to give it that. Beth's work doesn't really naturally lean into bold concepts or strong visual storytelling. To me, her eye is very much of a photojournalist. It's realism. She's going for truth over fantasy. She's drawn to moments rather than set pieces, a glance, a pause, a little moment of vulnerability. In the context of the Tortured Poets department, this means that she photographs Taylor like a subject in an emotional documentary, not a character in a visual story. Where fashion or pop photographers might build, an elaborate set or stylize some of the details or exaggerate emotion for drama, I think, and this is just my supposition. I don't know anything about this lady. I think that Beth's instinct from the work that I've seen of hers with Taylor is to observe, not to interfere. And that's what makes the work on Folklore feel so raw and authentic. It's great there. It matches the album's stripped down personal tone. But on a maximalist, literary, melodramatic album like Tortured Poets, that journalistic eye leaves a void. Instead of constructing a world, she captures Taylor simply existing and without strong creative direction. By the way, that is all Taylor Swift's fault, no one else's. That world feels kind of unmoored. Beth's strength is making quiet moments feel honest, but Tortured Poets needed someone to mythologize, not just document. Her work doesn't naturally lean into bold concepts or strong visual storytelling. Rocha brought whimsical maximalism to Lover, Merton Marcus gave sleek, fashion-forward editorial for Reputation, and Sarah Barlow created Come On Now, the instantly iconic, vaguely 60s referential pop branding that restarted Taylor's career in a different way. What sets them apart from Beth, I think, is their ability to visually define an era with their eye as a photographer. But again, I must repeat, this may very well be all Taylor Swift's fault. I've been saying it for years now that her inclinations as a visual artist, when she is not taking input from other people, are unclear, overly literal, and honestly not that interesting. She hasn't had an iconic music video, like one that has entered the canon of great all-time moments, since she started self-directing, and that should really be a warning sign. The creative concept, after all, must come from Taylor herself. It was probably logistically easier for everyone involved to just do the photojournalist thing and keep it #real, mirroring the return to vulnerability on the record because of the time crunch with the Eras tour, but without any promotion or really any follow-up visuals other than the Fortnite music video. And don't get me started on that. The album art is really left to do a lot of the heavy lifting for the perception and the myth making of the album, and it simply can't bear that weight. When you think about it, the visuals of Taylor Swift's eras are very important. I mean, this is the entire premise of the Eras tour. If she wasn't very particular and differentiated with each and every reiteration of herself, there wouldn't be anything to Eras tour about. There is a very distinct disconnect with the album's overall creative ambitions and its visual executions. Also, as music consumers, it has become more and more important that we take into account the way that a musical story moves visually through social media. That's kind of how we understand the work that is being made in this day and age. So if there isn't a lot of that and the work is very complex lyrically, it can get lost in translation. We get it, it's about the music, but I do think a lot of the misinterpretations of Tortured Poets could have been solved with some more curated storytelling by one Ms. Taylor Swift. This record is at times absurd. It's very funny. It is not as self-serious as people have made it out to be, calling it the Tortured Ears Department, TTPTSD, the evil things that people like to say. The writing is melodramatic and very expansive here. There's a lot to mine. I mean, look at the material. Helvetica font, great, thanks. Up close shot of you looking sad, perfect. No set pieces, no typewriter, nothing. Hands in my hair, like we get it, you're tortured. You're allegedly the chairman of this department and we can't even get you in a tweed blazer with some horn-rimmed glasses? I have been flirting with the idea of seeing Sabrina Carpenter in New York City later this year, but of course, tickets are sold out because everyone else had the same idea, which is why I want to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. They pull together resale tickets from across the internet, so instead of checking 10 different sites, you can find all the best deals in one place. There are more than 70,000 events listed, including concerts, sports festivals, and more. Right now, you can get tickets to shows like Sabrina Carpenter, Dua Lipa, Katy Perry, The Weeknd, and more. I love using SeatGeek because it takes the stress out of ticket hunting, and each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know exactly what kind of deal you're getting. Green means good, red means bad, and every ticket is backed by their incredible buyer guarantee. And you know I always come through for you with a code, so use code SwiftologistS10 for 10% off your next ticket purchase. That's 10% off tickets with promo code SwiftologistS10. Click the link in the description to download the app. It'll automatically add the code to your account, so you're ready right when the show pops up. Thank you again so much to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. The branding of this record is begging to be taken seriously too. It's so plain, it's so flat, it's so buttoned up. I'm a writer. Hear me spit my gorgeous lyrics. You must take them seriously. I am back in my broken-hearted bag. But again, there are dimensions to that that are unexplored by the visual identity of this album, which is why I'm harping on and making a whole video about it today. There were so many directions that she could have gone with this album. Full period piece, chaotic glam, dark academia generally, that was the lowest hanging fruit. But instead, we got nothing. Here's what we needed. Candlelit hallways, moody cliffs, broken chandeliers, unsent letters all over the floor. And what did we get? Beige. Post Malone. Mental hospital. The Fortnite video is the closest thing we even get to a fully realized visual from this era. I Can Do It With a Broken Heart is literally a tour music video. And even that feels like a rough draft. It's clear that Taylor wanted to gesture towards something thematically rich: the institutional metaphor, repression, the writing is compulsion, the romantic obsession that borders on delusion, but it never really crystallizes into a cohesive vision. This music video is the definition of just vibes. A typewriter here, a white hallway there, telephone box, Ethan Hawke in a lab coat. Sure, it's like she knew what she wanted to reference, but she didn't know what she wanted to say by putting all those references together. And I think that this is Taylor's problem as a director. She's great at curating tone, but she's not good at visually building narrative or visual metaphor. She directs like someone who makes Pinterest boards. It's all reference, it's no rigor. She doesn't really move the camera with intention. She doesn't block scenes dynamically, and her editing choices often lack rhythm or tension. And most of all, she just doesn't interrogate her own concepts. She places them on the screen and assumes that we'll get it, or she'll make it so obvious that there's nothing to mind other than exactly what's in front of you. Torture, typewriter, black and white, sad. And again, I love that Taylor is taking the reins. I love that it's written by Taylor Swift, directed by Taylor Swift, starring Taylor Swift. I love that she's interested in the visual language of her work, and she has obviously been, contributing to that heavily throughout her career. But directing specifically is a craft. It's not enough to feel something. You have to be able to translate that feeling into a story that the audience can absorb visually aside from the music. That's why it's a separate art. She's directing from a place of emotion, not composition. And Fortnight, which should have been this grand, strange literary descent into madness, ends up feeling like an A24 short made by someone who had 48 hours, a dream, a six-pack, and a three-room rental set. Even the Ethan Hawke and the Josh Charles casting is a missed opportunity. These are actors from Dead Poet Society, a film about the dangers and beauty of living passionately through words. Hello. That's the entire thesis of Torture Poets. But instead of doing anything meaningful with them, she just puts them in lab coats and gives them 2 seconds of screen time so that you can make the connection and calls it a day. There's not a lot of interaction going on here. And it's not just that the Fortnight video doesn't commit to the mental hospital imagery, it's that it doesn't commit to anything. It wants to be haunting and surreal, but it just ends up playing it too safe. It wants to be emotion, but flattens itself under its own polish. And ultimately, it suffers from the same problem as the album's visuals: a lack of world building, a fear of going all the way. The tragedy of the Fortnite music video isn't that it's bad, it's that it had the potential to be really, really good. Let's actually talk about the mental hospital bit, because that could have been a really compelling and powerful visual identity for this whole record. She was clearly trying to force this through on Fortnite, but imagine, just walk with me here, a Fresh Out the Slammer music video where she's literally being released from jail or the mental hospital perhaps, where she's languishing, she's thinking about entering her period of temporary insanity. Once she manages to convince the people holding her hostage that she's totally fine again, she's literally writing letters to her man outside the confines of the hospital in this song. Let's just even linger in the mental hospital image that she conjured in the Fortnite music video for longer than a second. What if we explored other parts of the hospital: padded walls, lush therapy rooms with extravagant velvet couches, more old-timey medicine jars labeled with song titles or whatever Easter egg she wants to shove down our throat, chic straitjackets made of, I don't know, lace and tulle. Let's get her in a snatched waist straitjacket. I'm saying it. The mental hospital is a really interesting metaphor to explore for this record because it embodies a lot of the more complex issues and ideas that she's wrestling with: female hysteria, emotional repression, the gag order of being a famous oversharer, public shaming, performing happy endings. Historically, we know that institutions were where hysterical women were sent to be silenced. I was supposed to be sent away, but they forgot to come and get me. Taylor is definitely the kind of woman, as a character in her music, I'm not speaking of her as a human being, who would have been locked up for feeling too much and being too loud about her pain at a certain point in recent history. She would have been punished for that. In fact, in other ways, she has been punished for that. The Maddie Healy backlash, which this album addresses directly and in detail, is a period where even when she was on top of the world, in the height of her powers, her reputation was under siege because of her romantic choices. Her own fans were behaving as though she was a malfunctioning NPC in a computer game. The hospital metaphor could have gone in so many different directions. She could have played with perception. Am I the patient? Am I the doctor? Am I the hallucination of a patient? What if she played different patients based on the archetypes of female madness that are explored on Torture Poets? The bolter, the albatross, the delusional woman who can't stop screaming about an alien abduction after a bad breakup? Perhaps the chairman of the Torture Poets department is the evolved Taylor, counseling all these different versions of herself in the hospital. We could have gone in so many different areas. All right, let's talk about what could have and should have been if I were in the room with the creative team building the visuals for the Torture Pose department. Here's what I would have pitched. This is what I would have brought to the table. The tone of the album is so specific, it's so rich with metaphor and character. The visual treatment really deserved to reflect that. I've broken it down into a few aesthetic directions that pull from literary references, period dramas, and the kind of haunted high gloss mood that we know she can deliver when she wants to. So here's how I would have built the world around torture poets, starting with a few core references, and then I'm going to go into some subcategories that could have each, anchored different visuals, videos, or even album editions. In my mind, when I'm thinking of what is the torture poets department, there are three words that immediately come to mind: romance, repression, and ruin. It's haunting, it's a little unnerving, it's baroque, it's melodramatic, but it's also refined and elegant. First up, I like to call this one haunted Victorian femininity. My favorite part of the Fortnite music video was the vaguely Victorian, old-timey period piece element of it all. She hasn't done a full kind of period cosplay like that, and I would have liked to see her lean into it rather than just gesture towards it here. When I think of torture poets, I'm thinking ethereal visions of lace veils and candlelight and corsets, burnt books and melting candles, broken typewriters, spilled ink, grand staircases, high necklines, rusty gilded mirrors, old manor homes, and isolated bucolic landscapes. An atmospheric, haunted femininity really is what jumps to mind when I think of a theme and a visual and a vibe. Visually, some characters that would be a good reference for this would be, first and foremost, Miss Havisham from Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Yes, that's right. She's the right where you left me girl. She's the perennial jilted woman. Her whole purpose is to be a symbol of ruinous romance, completely stuck in time. She is wearing her moth-eaten wedding dress for the rest of her life after she got left at the altar as her grand home decays in filth around her and she refuses to move on. Betrayed on her wedding day, she stopped the clocks to let the cake rot and raised a child to carry out her revenge fantasy. This is a woman who was undone not just by heartbreak, but by the refusal to process that heartbreak. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Down bad crying at the gym. Obviously, a stylized version of Miss Havisham. We don't need the grime, but you get the vision. We also have, surprise, surprise, Jane Eyre. Emotionally tormented in a suppressive society. Jane is a writer. She's a thinker. She's a piner, much like Taylor Swift. The intensity of her inner world does not match her tightly restrained exterior. She writes herself into power. Does that sound like someone we all know? A woman with deep, unruly feelings, navigating a world that demands silence and decorum and self-denial. Jane's whole arc is about reclaiming her autonomy, refusing to compromise her moral center, and choosing herself, even when it costs her love. It's a story of internal revolution. My references here visually for this mood board obviously are Miss Havisham, Jane Eyre, the movie Crimson Peak, and Wuthering Heights. We are talking corsets, veils, gloves, lace, creaking floorboards, candlelit exteriors, terrifying portraits, quills, dried flowers, cracked china. This is the most fruitful area for expansion, I think. And don't worry, because at the end of the video, I'm going to go through each and every one of my little subcategories that I made and give you a full album rollout. Now, up next, second subcategory, if we wanted to get a little artsy with it and a little less literal, which is not her thing, she loves to be literal, I'm going to call this next vibe period surrealism. The visual references here are the movie's Portrait of a Lady on Fire and Picnic at Hanging Rock, as well as the photographers Julia Hedda, Paolo Roversi, and Tim Walker. This is more of a note for the album art, I suppose. Here's how we could have gone with something interesting with a period influence: long exposures, smudged edges, ethereal glows as if by candlelight, portraits that kind of almost seem like oil paintings. This is definitely a more interior expression of torture poets. It's talking about the unpredictability of the heart, of memory and fixation. The grief here is strangely beautiful thanks to the surrealism, but also grounded with the period details. And this approach would have made so much sense for torture poets because it isn't a straightforward album. It's erratic, it's slippery, it's feverish. It's not just about heartbreak. It's about how memory mutates your heartbreak, how obsession can warp your heartbreak, and how time can get completely distorted in the aftermath of loss. As a wise woman once quoted when she wrote Red, "Love is so short, forgetting is so long." Period surrealism would have let Taylor play with that subjectivity, would have let her become a half-remembered portrait of a woman scorned or a ghost flickering through different versions of herself. Think of the potential here. Lovers blurred into that double exposure, ink staining lace, fragmented reflections in antique mirrors. It definitely would have honored the album's literary, romantic, and mournful themes, but in a way that felt really artistic and elevated, and it would kind of tone down that self-seriousness that I think people picked up on and critiqued. Instead of "look at me, obviously sad, look, I'm using Helvetica," this could have been "I've been undone by longing." and I'm going to haunt your house now because of it. You see the difference? And now here's the final one, and this might be my personal favorite. I'm calling this one Gothic literature. The visual references here are the Great Expectations movie, Atonement, Crimson Peak again, and chiaroscuro lighting in general. I don't know that I'm saying that right. We're looking at some gorgeous, grandiose decay, opulent ruins, broken typewriters, beauty surrounded by filth. Taylor in a Victorian-esque Vivienne Westwood gown in a rotting ballroom, for example. The glamour is there, but it's giving haunted. Everything is beautiful and also crumbling at the same time. This aesthetic would have perfectly externalized the most tortured literary parts of torture poets. The Gothic heroine is a woman who is undone by her interior world. She is surrounded by mirrors, ghosts, letters, and ruins. She's trapped in the house that she's built with her pain. And Tortured Poets is full of this, emotional collapse rendered with ornate Baroque lyricism. It's theatrical, it's rich, it's disturbing, but visually, we got white sheets, a button down, a hospital hallway. The writerly aspect of this album, the whole I'm the chairman of the Tortured Poets Department narrative, was screaming for Gothic treatment. It's such a missed opportunity, especially when she gives us that in the Insummation poem, which, let's be honest, is pure high Gothic drama. My tarnished coat of arms, my muses acquired like bruises. I think this is written on my Tortured Poets custom jacket here. The tick, tick, tick of love bombs, my veins of pitch black ink. This is not just a little sad girl with a pen. This is a literary obsession as a form of emotional bleeding. It's Virginia Woolf's room of one's own if that room was collapsing in on itself, if the ink was cursed and the act of writing was more punishment than salvation. Writing in this scenario isn't soft or cozy, it's a compulsion, it's an addiction, a haunting, a trap. So why didn't we see any of that? Imagine the visuals. Taylor pacing through a rotting manor when the wallpaper is peeling and every window is nailed shut, except for the library, which remains beautiful and untouched. It's her sacred space. Everything else has fallen apart around her, but the place where she writes, pristine. But it's also her prison. She's surrounded by unfinished manuscripts. She can't finish anything. Ink stains, melted candles, portraits of her past selves and her ex-lovers, kind of like Blank Space, but decayed, literary, unhinged. We could have watched her build the album in real time. Maybe she begins as this sort of ghostly Havisham-esque figure, locked in a decaying house of memory, and by the end, she's transformed into a modern academic, crisp blazer and all, presenting her new course on tortured poetry at some elite Ivy League university with a new wing in her name. From feral to composed, because that's kind of what the story is, right? From myth to woman, from suffering to self-mythologizing. This is the exact kind of visual storytelling that could have deepened the story and the myth of tortured poets. It would have matched the ambition of the writing and pulled it out of that grayscale haze that it was left in. We've been begging for the lavender haze. Instead of leaving all the meaning to the lyrics, we could have seen that descent. We could have felt that chaos. We could have watched the ink bleed. I want to come up with a little marketing rollout plan for each category, but first, let's do a really practical reimagining of this album rollout. Taylor's still on the Eras tour, okay, in this scenario, so she's slightly constrained by time. Let's take the surprise drop and remodel it ever so slightly. It feels like Tortured Poets couldn't really decide what it wanted to be. It wanted the mystique of the surprise drop, but the anticipation of a traditional protracted release with, the various cover unveilings and random track announcements. Here's how I would have tried to accomplish both of those things at the same time. At the end of the last Era show, before it was revamped for Paris, there comes one word on the screen: prelude. It corresponds to a YouTube video uploaded with the manuscript as the song. The song is untitled. It just says prelude is the title of the video. It has not been released on streaming. For a low effort video that Taylor isn't even in, it could be like an enchanted book, like the Book of Kells vibes, with moving images and scenes from the past. And at the end of the video, Taylor maybe closes the book and it goes on a shelf with all volumes of the other works, read 1989. And you zoom in on the spine and it says the Tortured Poets Department, the brand new album, Scream. Then we get an Instagram post, the Instagram post that she put out at the Grammys, why not, that has the cover of the album with the date of the release in 2 weeks or however quickly given pre-order time. So how does this solve the problem with the protracted rollout? It doesn't give people as much time to make it up in their head and dream up something that is so different from what we actually end up receiving. It also gives a song with a vibe and an indication of what at least some of the record will sound like. The manuscript has strong prelude energy. I think it would be known pretty quickly that this wasn't the single. It's obvious that it would be, something that was an introduction, a taster to the album. It lets her introduce the literary themes of the record while keeping some of the more radio-friendly stuff as a surprise for the eventual release. Honestly, because of how vast and intricate Tortured Poets is, I guess a surprise release really was a strong option, but I probably wouldn't have released the anthology on the same day. I would have waited a few months to drop the rest of it, or simply I would have pared back the entire thing and delivered a more concise 20-track album. And if I had to release the anthology separately, I would have led with So High School as the first single for maximum tape us publicity. Come on, we need to make use of the purse. Now, in this scenario, what would have been the single right after this manuscript prelude, all of this stuff? I'm presuming that the Eras tour is still going, so there really isn't enough time to do a whole music video production for multiple songs. I still would have swapped out Fortnight as the single for Down Bad, the lead single, with a music video more akin to that like Rain telephone box vibe in the Fortnite music video. I'll get more into what I would do with the visuals later on when I get into my specific vibe breakdowns. For commercial viability, I would have done either this one or I can do it with a broken heart, I guess. It's so hard to tell whether Fortnite is a real organic hit or if it's just getting played because it was pushed as the one and only song from this record for a really long time. That screwed her at the Grammys. Down Bad Song of the Year would have been more likely than anyone thought. I think it would also really serve as a funny and interesting bait and switch kind of effect from having the manuscript as the prelude, then we go into Down Bad. Oh, you thought I was over it? You thought I was all healed? Well, some of it. You haven't heard this specific freakdom yet, though. Okay, now let's get back to my 3 vibes that I conjured up and see what I can do with them. I want to take a moment and discuss the streaming performance of Tortured Poets because that can give us a good general guide as to what other single possibilities could have been outside of Fortnite and I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. Of her 100 most streamed songs, only 5 are entries from Tortured Poets beyond the 2 singles. Down Bad, Guilty as Sin, Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, and So Long London. So I'm going to try to work with these songs insofar as possible, seeing as how they are popular and have hit potential on an album that is kind of devoid of straightforward hits. Okay, we'll start with Haunted Victorian Femininity. I like my prelude idea. So let's say we're carrying on from there. The enchanted book opens up on a dusty desk, pages flutter with flashes of past eras, read 1989, Reputation, rendered as volumes on a shelf in a candlelit library. Finally, we zoom in on the spine. Yes, it says the Torture Post Department, the book closes. It ends. In this scenario, everything that happens with the prelude and the album announcement has happened already. But after she writes that caption that says the story isn't mine anymore, we realize the album is out in 4 weeks, pre-orders are live, and then all of a sudden, 12 hours later, the first single, So Long London, appears. The video for So Long London sets the tone for this new world. It opens with a shipwreck off the coast of a gray, beautiful sea, Taylor drenched and breathless in a tattered Victorian wedding gown. I'm thinking of the cardigan scene where she's holding onto the piano, dragging herself onto the shore. There are maybe bloodstains on her dress. The sky is heavy with fog, and behind her, that shipwreck is burning up. She stumbles through the wet grass. She's battered. She's shaking. And just before she collapses, she sees it, a distant manor house glowing on a hilltop. I'm thinking Wuthering Heights, really. This is where all of these ideas take place. And this is where the story begins. That is the department. 2 weeks later, we enter the manor with the second single. She makes it inside, Guilty as Sin. This video is quieter. It's more interior. Taylor has survived the wreck. She's warming up. She's cleaned up, but she's clearly changed. She explores the manor's candlelit hallways, all soft shadows and creaking floors. She's haunted, not by ghosts, but by this kind of pleasant desire. We see flashes of someone else in her memory, a man she's dreaming of, longing for, possibly hallucinating. Is it Travis? Is it Maddie? At this point, we don't know, remember? And that's the point. She writes all these letters and burns them. She plays the piano but never finishes the song. She walks through rooms as though she's been here before. The house is a space of fixation. It is of repression, of emotional purgatory. And this video introduces one of the album's central questions. If So Long London ends one chapter, who is this new character she's writing into the margins? Because again, let's keep in mind that the gag was it was all about Maddie Healy. We weren't expecting that. Just days before the album drops, Taylor maybe might appear on the cover of Vogue or Vanity Fair for one in-depth interview. And it would be question and answer style, kind of like what she did with Rolling Stone all those years ago. The photo shoot leans into the aesthetic of antique mirrors, ink-stained hands, lace gloves, candlelit libraries. The profile is serious. It's literary. It's intense. It talks more about her writing than about her life. It talks about writing as a compulsion. Maybe it drops a random lyric that will send everyone spiraling on an Easter egg hunt. I leap from the gallows and I levitate down your street would be a really good one to do that with. Then we have midnight on release day. The album drops, but not all 31 tracks, just the core 20. The anthology comes later. And with the release of the album, we get the third visual. Who's Afraid of Little Old Me? Yes, that's the third single. If Guilty as Sin was eerie restraint, Little Old Me is a pure feral rage. The manor is in disarray. Scorched walls, scratched mirrors, a chandelier swaying dangerously. Taylor is tearing through the house in full breakdown mode, wearing something gauzy and unhinged. Her eyes are going white like that visual from the tour. She's ripping down curtains. She's throwing open locked doors, screaming into the void. There are no more hallucinations. This is her. She is fully untethered. She confronts paintings of her past selves. She smashes a typewriter. She paces like a woman possessed. And by the end, she's standing where it all began, back on the cliffs, looking out over the sea, hair wild, eyes calm. We've come full circle. But she's not the same woman who crawled out of those waves. She's different. She's harder, smarter in the nick of time, some might say. In the months following the album's release, she would skip the traditional promo cycle. I still think she's kind of above that. No SNL, no radio junket. Instead, she appears in one stripped back visual performance series, like a tiny desk of sorts, but it's her own production. Maybe it's the Long Pond, that setup, or the delicate September Spotify cover setup visually, but more regal and grand. Actually, maybe like New Year's Day at the Reputation Secret Sessions. I'm taking references from all over the place. Sorry, but here she performs LOML, So Long London, Clara Bow, and Guilty as Sin by flickering candlelight all on the piano. Elegant and devastating, period. 3 months later comes the drop of the anthology. This time we get a surprise single, So High School. Here we go. It's campy, it's light. It's the first time we see Taylor outside the manor in this new music video. A tongue-in-cheek wink at the Tavis media storm dressed in a Letterman jacket, chewing gum, blowing kisses. Maybe she's getting into a fancy old school convertible, just like the one she hopped into with Travis after their first public appearance to jet her away from this evil-haunted British manor. It's a tonal shift, but a clever one. A reminder that this woman contains multitudes. The pain is real, the romance is grand, the writing is obsessive, but sometimes, what's a girl gonna do? A diamond's gotta shine. And with that, the era completes itself, literary, conceptual, and gloriously haunted. A myth not just written, but built room by room, rack by rack. Period surrealism. Let's get into a high art bag here. This would never happen, but walk with me. This begins after the last show of the Eras tour. This time we open in a dream. No social posts, no public announcement, just a silent drop of a short film titled Postscript in all caps on YouTube, a 2-minute visual loop of Taylor walking through a surreal gallery of her past selves, oil-painted portraits with blinking eyes, glass display cases holding old objects and outfits of relevance from her tours, whispered fragments of lyrics echoing faintly, distorted in the background. She enters a sealed room, marked TTPD. She opens the door, everything glitches, and it goes black. The first single, My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, drops the next day with a music video that throws us straight into the uncanny. Taylor is a broken porcelain doll. She is posed stiffly inside a Victorian toy shop that is both gorgeous and grotesque. Think Marie Antoinette meets Coraline. Shelves of cracked dolls, a wind-up ballerina spinning endlessly, antique mirrors that show too many reflections. She's dressed in ruffles and lace, but something is off. Her limbs click kind of unnaturally when she moves. Her eyes don't blink at the right time. Throughout the video, we watch her malfunction. Her arm falls off and is sewn back on, but flashback to a boy who entered the shop every day and played with her. Then finally, he bought another doll and left after playing with her so much that she broke. In the press cycle, Taylor doesn't do interviews. She does installations. Pop-ups begin appearing in major cities, and we're not doing random shelves in the Grove with misspelled titles on the wall. No. We're in New York, we're in London, we're in Paris, and these pop-ups are designed like twisted toy shops. Inside, there are curated displays of dolls in different states of ruin. Perhaps they can be dressed in different outfits from future music videos. Music boxes play warped versions of TTPD instrumentals, kind of like that weird vault track thing she used to do. Each visitor leaves with a black and white photo strip of themselves inside the dollhouse. These are free ideas. A month later comes the second single, Down Bad. You see how I'm picking the easiest to get songs from Tortured Poets so the surrealist visuals don't get too wacky? We pick up where the My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys video left off. The toy shop is now closed. Night has fallen. I envision this in Paris somehow. Strange lights begin to pulse through the windows of the toy shop. The door creaks open on its own. Taylor, still in doll form, is lured out onto the cobblestone streets, drawn by something in the sky. She's wandering through a foggy town lit only by gas lamps and moonlight. Then, a beam from the sky. She looks up. Her expression is vacant, or maybe it's wonder. The abduction isn't terrifying. It's romantic. She floats upwards in slow motion. Ariana Grande, Eternal Sunshine Supernatural style, if you know what I'm saying. For a moment, she looks almost free. We flash to her levitating inside a strange drawing room aboard a spaceship that resembles kind of like a Victorian conservatory, because I think modern imagery would be a little weird here. Leaded glass, ivy growing over the walls. She's not scared. She's dreaming on an operating table of more scenes with the boy who came into the toy store, the adventures that they could have had together. And then all of a sudden, the ground disappears and she's skyrocketing back down towards the earth. It's clear there's a continuation, but we don't know when. And then the real show begins. A week before the album drops, we get the third single, I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, and this one, full spectacle music video. The video opens in a surreal nightmare circus. Taylor has been dropped back into the world. She doesn't recognize it anymore. She is now the doll-turned-performer, headlining a big top tent filled with ghostly, exaggerated versions of her fans screaming for her. Her face is powdered porcelain. Her smile is way too wide. She's in a sequined leotard. She's tap dancing with bloodied feet. Think Cabaret meets the Eras tour if it was cursed. She performs through exhaustion, through pain, through manic grin. The ringmaster is barking orders. She collapses. She rises. She collapses again. At the album's release, there is no traditional promo, no Fallon, no magazine spreads. Instead, she partners with, I don't know, Criterion Channel to host a Tortured Poets visual premiere night, a curated screening of all 3 videos with a new intro piece directed by her. This is her anti-pop rollout, a rejection of the traditional, but she's still marketing very traditional songs. Every choice makes her look more untouchable, more enigmatic, more creative, more mythic. The album drops at midnight. It's the full 31 tracks. I mean, it's surrealism. More is more. Weeks later, Taylor reemerges only once to perform I Can Do It With a Broken Heart at an award show, but not in her usual form. The stage is redesigned as the circus set. She performs the song in character, like the music video. No wink, no break, no charm, just mechanical cheer and heartbreak in motion. It's a chilling performance, and it cements the visual identity and language of this era as something new for her. Not confessional, not romantic, but surreal, stylized, almost uncomfortably revealing. This is Torture Poets as haunted theater, a story told through ribbons and stardust, heartbreak and hallucination, where the fantasy is pretty, but the glitch is always glitching. And finally, Gothic literature. This rollout begins not with a bang, but a whisper. At midnight, a black and white clip quietly appears on her socials, a flicker of candlelight, the distant clack of a typewriter, and a single line, spoken low. I was supposed to be sent away, but they forgot to come and get me. No further context, and no, Fortnite is not the lead single. Just Taylor, barely visible in a decaying library. A day later, the announcement comes, the Torture Poets department opens on this date. The album cover is literary and restrained. Taylor in, I don't know, like a vintage slip or coat, seated at a heavy wooden desk surrounded by scattered papers and unfinished letters. I like the idea of an oil painting here. The caption reads, "All's fair in love and poetry." It's a statement of intent, but also a warning. The first single is the title track, The Tortured Poets Department. The music video leans into the mythology. Taylor is playing the newest member of a mysterious institution, a kind of gothic archive for romantic despair. She types on a ghostly machine that seems to write faster than her fingers move, surrounded by flickering gaslight and ink-stained walls. The lines between memory and fantasy are blurred. She walks through candlelit corridors where forgotten letters drift like snow. Each room is a past relationship preserved like evidence with all the accoutrements of the different eras. She isn't just heartbroken, she's been drafted into a system that catalogs and curates her pain. The styling is elegant, but it's quite melancholic. Waistcoats, lace collars, spectacles in her breast pocket. She's not crying, she's documenting. She's like a detective investigating her own heartbreak. Promo stays classic. You know, this one I'm keeping a little more traditional. Good Morning America premiere of a music video. One Apple Music interview with Zane Lowe where he asks good questions, harder to accomplish than you might think, then a cover of A magazine with candlelit portraiture and references to writing through heartbreak. If I were her, I would describe this record as archival grief, the kind of grief that you can't just throw away, so you have to file it away for later. And she calls the title track the mission statement and hints that the department is bigger than just her. 2 weeks later, then, we get the second single, I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. The video brings us back to the same institution, but now Taylor is a performer there. The aesthetic shifts to something a little bit more theatrical. She's being dressed and choreographed by unseen hands, rehearsing for a show in an empty ballroom. Her smile is brittle, her movements are sharp. She dances for no one over and over again. The department doesn't care if she's healed. It just needs her to appear composed. It's a sharp take on emotional labor, the performance of recovery, the idea of being seen as fine before you actually are, which she talks about a lot on this record. The styling is structured and pristine, like she's been costumed rather than dressed. She looks uncomfortable. For promo, she does a single Vanity Fair video breaking down the looks from the Torture Poets department. It's cheeky and controlled. She references fictional visuals from the music videos, breaking them down like characters from a novel, the corset from the archive room, the performance dress, the coat from the cover. It's a wink to the fans without overly explaining the concept, something she's not capable of doing. Finally, 1 week before the album drops, we get the third and final single, Yes, Down Bad. The tone shifts. This is where things get more emotionally exposed. Taylor is alone again in the institution, but now the rooms are changing shape. The lighting flickers. It's no longer cataloging her sadness. It's mirroring it back to her. The walls are mirrors. Her reflection lingers. Doors slam on their own. She sings into a mirror that fogs as if it's breathing back at her. The supernatural here is very subtle. It's never explicit. It's just a suggestion that this place has taken on a life of its own. Grief echoes, memory loops. She's doubling back on herself. The styling can be a little bit softer here. Maybe it looks like she's just woken up from a Victorian nap. Gauzy sleeves, loose hair, barefoot on marble floors. She's unraveling, but the department will not let her leave. She has to file this story away too. And at this point, I think the story is complete. The Tortured Poets department is the initiation. I Can Do It With a Broken Heart is the performance. Down Bad is the consequence. A full arc told across a single setting. The album drops at midnight. No double album twist. No chaos, no collector's editions. Just a sculpted release. She closes the rollout with a single live performance of Down Bad at the Grammys, where it is nominated for and wins Song of the Year. Of course, string quartet, ink-splattered piano, lace sleeves trailing across the keys. It's poetic, it's clean, it's beautiful, it's devastating. This is a rollout that's restrained. It's literary, but it's not too lofty. She's not reinventing herself, but she is refining the myth. A woman who writes everything down so she never has to forget. A record keeper of heartbreak, the chairman of her own emotional history, one might say. So those are all of my deranged delusional predictions of what I think could have happened if, something went different, if the stars aligned in a different way. Regardless, I love this record so much and I refuse to let anyone tell me that it's bad. And I just wanted to make this video today to celebrate the fact that it's basically been a year since it came out. That's crazy. That's literally insane. All right, I will see you in my next one. And don't forget to get tickets to Evolution of a Snake live.